hello and welcome. Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome to Dungeon Video. This is my 31 Days of Horror. This is my 1950s versus 1960s series, and if you're a new subscriber, which you are because my channel's pretty new, this is my 1950s versus 1960s series, where each day for the 31 Days of Horror, I will be for one day reviewing a 1950s movie, and then the next day a 1960s movie. And today, do we have a treat for you? Today we have Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Yes, the classic, the one that Hitchcock is known for. Anthony Perkins, Janet Leigh, all up in there slashing it up in the 60s. Before the slasher craze, we have the most prominent proto-slasher to ever be made, Psycho. And the way I'm talking about this movie, yes, I do love Psycho. I've seen it numerous times, and this is my first review for it, so let's just go off with the prologue. Alfred Hitchcock's landmark masterpiece of the macabre stars Anthony Perkins as the troubled Norman Bates, whose old dark house and adjoining motel are not the place to spend a quiet evening. No one knows that better than Marion Crane, who obviously is played by Janet Leigh, the ill-fated traveller whose journey ends in a notorious shower scene. First, a private detective, Martin Balsam, then Marion's sister, Vera Miles, search for her as the horror and suspense mount to a terrifying climax where the mysterious killer is finally revealed. Okay, I can go on and on about Psycho. It's one of my favourite movies. I usually pop it on about, I'd say, once or twice a year. And I even actually watched this one with my grandparents, and they loved it. It didn't have too much gore. If you do like slasher movies, I think this brings a little bit of a class to a slasher movie. I guess it was before the slasher craze, and it was one of the, I would say, the most prominent influences on movies like Halloween and Friday the 13th, with the famous shower scene with the knife coming down, and who can forget that? It still today is probably the most iconic horror scene, even though I would say Psycho does kind of bridge onto that thriller thing, which I explained in my Rear Window review. It does bridge onto the thriller mystery, but Psycho, you could even say it is a slasher, even though it is probably more fittingly categorized as a proto-slasher. So Marion Crane, played by Janet Leigh, actually takes some money from her bank, and as she takes this money, she's looking for a retreat to meet up with her lover, Sam Loomis, played by Donald Pleasence. No, I'm just kidding. No, Sam Loomis, the original Sam Loomis from Psycho, which was obviously homaged in the 78 Halloween. And yes, so she goes and she finds a retreat in Bates Motel. The Bates Motel, the infamous Bates Motel from Psycho 2, 3, and 4, and the TV movie Bates Motel, and obviously the TV series Bates Motel. Bates Motel was pretty iconic now. Yes, so she goes there, and she actually meets Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins. She meets this timid, almost lonesome, troubled character who is overpowered by his mother. You get that straight off the bat. As soon as you meet Norman, and Marion Crane soon realizes that after a quick exchange with Norman, and while she's in her hotel, she can hear Mrs. Bates screaming from the house which is next to the motel. And let's just start off with the house. The house is iconic. There's that really iconic scene, the mezzanine image of Norman actually walking down the steps with the Bates house in the background. It looks awesome. It gives me goosebumps every time I watch it because it is such an iconic scene. It's up there with Jack chopping the door down in The Shining, the Here's Johnny scene. This is one of those moments. And also, another one of those moments is the most watched, I think, 30 seconds or a minute of Marion Crane's killing, where Norman Bates busts in the... Yes, that is probably the most iconic scene in horror. In thriller, this movie is, I would say it's a horror. It's in horror territory, but you can probably say it is a thriller and a mystery as well, with everything that's going. So, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Psycho, drop what you're doing now, go to Netflix or go down to the shop or anywhere that's close, pick it up, buy it from eBay. You're missing out, man. Psycho is probably the best movie you'll ever watch, one of the best movies you'll ever watch. And the thing is, it's not too gruesome. So if you're one of those people that doesn't like gruesome movies, or you're not into slashers, you want a little bit more substance than an 80s slasher. Not that saying that 80s slashers don't have substance, but I think this is one of those movies that has a little bit more going to it. There's a little bit more context in the characters, and which I mentioned Hitchcock is really great at. The dialogue's fantastic. The exchanges between Norman and Marion. Like I said, as soon as she talks to Norman, she understands that he has a troubled relationship. She really understands and she feels sorry for the character. But she has no idea what is going on with Norman and Bates Motel and the whole history behind it. And she continues going on. She thinks she's going to stay a couple of nights, and it doesn't actually go that way. But yes, Psycho is one of those truly great movies. Everything down to the lighting, the dialogue, the iconography, and the mythology behind the character of Norman Bates. I think it was the first time they actually did something like this, exploring more of a psychological angle to a serial killer, in a sense. And I don't think that's ever been done before Hitchcock. Everything, I guess, in the 60s and the 50s was Vincent Price flicks or Hammer. Before that, it was The Monster in the Castle, that gothic horror. No, this is stripping it straight down to human capability, evil and human psychology. This is really explaining it. And Psycho is a psychological horror movie as well. So Psycho is everything you want in a horror movie. Great characters, as I mentioned. Great dialogue. The set pieces. I believe the actual house is a little bit smaller, so you can get that towering shot of Norman down the stairs. So everything down to a T is just done really well. The black and white imagery works really well. I think that if this movie was in color, I don't think it would have hit it that well, because the lighting, it gives it a little bit more of a terrifying nightmare feel. And even with the rain, it adds to the terror. It adds to the frightening imagery in the movie. So Psycho, I would have to give, I don't really give 10s out of 10s, but I would say Psycho is a high 9 out of 10. It's one of those movies you can't miss. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoy the review. Subscribe. Let me know what you think of Psycho, or the things that you pick up from these movies. So just drop a comment down below. This is Kurt from Dungeon Video. Thanks for watching.